Louis-Pierre, thank you very much for joining us today. Before we discuss G Mining Ventures, I want to have a brief conversation on your sister company, and that's G Mining Services. And that's involved in the construction of mines, and it has built some of the largest gold mines in North and South America over the years, including Greenstone, which is owned by Equinox Gold. And when Greenstone is up in full production, it'll be one of Canada's largest gold producers. What other gold mines or what other mines has G Mining Services built over the years?
Yeah, they over the last 15 years, G Mining Services has built Essakane for IAMGOLD in Burkina Faso, the Marion Mine in Suriname for Newmont, and Fruta del Norte for Lundin Gold. And as you just mentioned, Equinox's hard rock project in Ontario. So those are some of the significant gold mines that the group has been involved with.
And what was the rationale for starting a new company, G Mining Ventures, which is focused on gold production?
Yeah, in October of 2020, we created G Mining Ventures, and it was really an opportunity for us to be on the management side as opposed to the services provider side of the business. So we invested in the equity and to create the company along with some founding shareholders. And the intent was really to be in the driver's seat and acquire assets that we could develop and create value for our shareholders.
And as we both know, the building and operating of mines is extremely complex and can lead to many issues. But because you're so experienced at building mines, does this give you an edge in terms of operating mines?
Yeah, I do think it gives us a bit of a competitive edge. There's not that many companies that want to take on execution risk when it comes to building mines. But given our expertise and our track record, we feel quite comfortable doing that. So yeah, I do feel that that's a sweet spot that where we can create value for shareholders. And when it comes to operating mines, I mean, a lot of our people come from operating backgrounds, so it's often just a continuity of actually delivering on a project.
So that's a great overview of G Mining Services. Let's look at G Mining Ventures now. Your largest project is Tocantinzinho, or TZ, which is a gold producer in Brazil. You declared first gold pour in July, and you recently declared commercial production in September. And before we examine the production profile and the economics, I always like looking at the backstory of mines. And you acquired this asset from Eldorado in 2021. How much did you pay?
We paid 110 million, so 50 of which was an upfront consideration, which was shares and cash, and we have a 60 million deferred payment to Eldorado 1 year after commercial production. So obviously that'll be September next year. So yeah, this was an asset that they looked to divest that was non-core in their portfolio, given that they were focused on developing screws in Greece. So we entertained discussions there, did due diligence, and came to what we think is a win-win transaction for both parties. Obviously, we were looking for an asset that was construction ready, that had lots of good technical work done on it. And this kind of fell in the sweet spot of us developing projects in the, call it Guyana Shield, and in tropical environment settings, which we're quite familiar with. So this all kind of came together quite nicely and is a great founding asset for the company.
And so you paid $115 million for this asset. How much did Eldorado pay, and how much money did they put into this over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say they probably put in an equal amount over the years in terms of drilling and technical studies and permitting. So we kind of essentially paid for the work they have put into it over the years. And I think that was kind of how we looked at value and what we could do with the asset. So yeah, definitely inherited a good quality work from Eldorado being the previous owner.
So as I mentioned, you just declared commercial production recently. Maybe you can give us an update on how things are progressing and when the mine will be in full production.
Yeah, we declared commercial production in September, so we currently been running at about 80% of nameplate of 13,000 tons per day. During the pre-production period, we also initiated the open pit mining, which has been taking place for the last 2 years. So the mine has been ramped up quite nicely at this point, and we expect to ramp the process plant up to 100% of nameplate by year end, or essentially Q1 next year. So the plant has been performing quite nicely in terms of recoveries. We're about 88% right now, with the view of getting to 90% as we continue to make refinements to our operating parameters of the plant.
And what's going to be the production profile over the first 5 years of the mine?
The first 5 years, we should be just sub 200,000 ounces. Over the life of mine of 10 years, which we currently have, we have 175,000 ounces of production planned for the life of mine.
And TZ also has a very large land package, 996 square kilometers. Are you going to, I'm sure you've identified a number of other targets. Are you currently exploring, or are you going to wait until you ramp up TZ?
Yeah, we've started doing some exploration work over the last couple of years, which was mostly to create a good baseline of information. So completing soil sampling, doing geophysics programs to better identify drill targets. So the intent was always to get ourselves into positive cash flow and then be able to, pay for our exploration programs through cash flow as opposed to raising equity. So obviously now the plan is to start ramping up our efforts and spend on that side. So we'll be spending about $4 million this year. We have 2 drills that are now on the project, starting to drill some of the near mine site targets that we've identified. But yeah, as you mentioned, the land package is quite huge. We have about 35 kilometers of strike length on the Tocantinzinho trend. So that's a lot of ground to explore in a tropical environment. So it does take a bit of time to do work properly in that part of the world.
So let's discuss the economics of this TZ, because it's highly profitable. It's going to be spinning off a lot of cash flow when it's up and running. And one of the things that really stands out to me is the extremely low all-in sustaining costs of $700, give or take. And I know it's an open pit and that tends to be cheaper than underground, but maybe you can just provide some more context. Why is the all-in sustaining cost so low?
Yeah, obviously that's the cost estimate that was developed in our feasibility study of 2022. So there's some inflation that's occurred since then, maybe around 15%. But the fundamental reasons for the low cost structure is the fact that, as you point out, we have an open pit that has a low strip ratio life of mine of 3.7. The earlier years were even lower, around 2 to 1. We also have built a transmission line that connects us into the power grid, so we have access to cheap renewable power, sub 7 cents per kilowatt hour. And generally, I mean, we have a circuit that doesn't require grinding to very fine grind to get good recoveries, and our reagent consumption is fairly low. So putting all these factors together really results in this low all-in sustaining cost structure that we have.
So I want to move on now and discuss another asset, Oko West. And earlier this year, GMIN Ventures acquired this asset. It's located in the country of Guyana, which is just north of Brazil. And maybe you can provide some context on this, because I believe it's on the same geological trend as TZ. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very similar. It's in the Guyana Shield, if you wish, and it's an area of the world that we have a lot of experience with our group having built the Rosebel gold mine in Suriname, Marion, as I said, in Suriname. And even prior to that, Louis Sr., when he was running Cambior, had built the Omai gold mine in Guyana back in the 90s. So generally, this is a part of the world that we are very, very familiar with. And so when we saw the exploration success developing at Oko West, we really felt that that would be a great asset in our portfolio and really suits our skill set again and our familiarity with the country and the region. So it's a transaction that we did to combine Reunion Gold with G Mining, and that really sets the stage for our next leg of growth now.
So let's look at the economics associated with this asset. What is the net present value and what will be the payback?
Well, this is a large gold mine. It'll be even larger than Tocantinzinho. So we have 353,000 ounces a year of gold production over 13 years. So this is an NPV out of our PA that we've just published, the press release of those results last couple weeks. So we generate a 1.4 billion NPV at 1950 gold price. So a payback in slightly over 3 years. So very short payback, and that's at 1950, as I said. So this is what I would consider a tier one asset, given the scale and the cost profile that we have, and the fact that this is in a very, very favorable jurisdiction, being in Guyana.
And the all-in sustaining cost is just under $1,000 an ounce. Why is it so much higher?
Yeah, the all-in sustaining is sub 1,000, but higher than TZ. So this mine has actually an open pit component that has a 6-to-1 strip ratio, and then we have an underground mine that goes below the pit. So obviously the underground mining costs play into that in terms of the overall mining cost. And also in Guyana, we will need to be self-sufficient when it comes to power generation. So we will be building an HFO power plant. So a power cost that'll be around 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So that all combined kind of results in a higher cost structure for this month.
And the CapEx associated with Oko West will be close to $1 billion. How do you plan on funding this?
Yeah, so our CapEx is 936 million. So obviously the financing plan for this will obviously use cash flow from Tocantinzinho that'll be generating good cash over the coming years. We also sit with a current cash balance of 100 million US currently, and we have warrants that would come due in 2027 that are essentially deep in the money at this point. But we do see an external funding gap of around 300 million, of which we see about 100 million being equipment financing for the mine fleet and other large equipment. And we're looking at around a 200 million corporate revolver that we could use to complete that funding requirement. So basically a very manageable, financing package, we believe, for the quality of this asset.
And Louis-Pierre, what is the timeline associated with production for Oko West?
So we're currently doing the feasibility study, which we will be publishing in the first quarter of next year. We're also intending to file our ESIA with the government, and we expect to start construction in first quarter, second quarter next year. So over the next, call it 3 years, we'll be developing this mine, commissioning in the last quarter of 27, and commercial production is planned for 2028. So very rapid timeline for this project.
And I want to move on now and discuss another asset called CentroGold. And you recently announced the acquisition of this. Take us through this asset and what was the rationale in acquiring it?
Yeah, this is an asset that we had done due diligence on, looking at it essentially 2 years ago. So this was in the portfolio of Oz Minerals, which was acquired by BHP. So it became even more non-core in BHP's portfolio. So we made a proposal to acquire that from BHP. So this is a gold project located in Maranhão State, which is next to Pará, where where Tocantinzinho is. So it's a large land package, 1,900 square kilometers, has resources defined on 3 deposits. So we're starting out with 2.3 million ounces of total resources. But at this point, we view this as a more of an exploration stage project, one that we would like to make bigger, find additional resources and conceive a larger project with. So this is a very nice, call it, pipeline project that we've added to the portfolio that we can explore and develop and mature to be developed in the future.
Louis-Pierre, I want to move on and discuss your balance sheet. You mentioned earlier that you're sitting on $100 million in cash, but how will you allocate that cash in the coming year?
Yeah, most of that cash will be deployed towards developing Oko West. So definitely in the very near term, it'll be just short-term money market type investments until we need to deploy that to fund Oko West. But yeah, that's essentially the near-term capital allocation. And obviously, as we just discussed, I mean, we have a need to raise funds through debt and external funding to develop the Oko West project. And once that's up and running, I mean, we'll be generating very good cash flow. And so at that point, we can look at dividends and other capital allocation strategies at that point.
And you have a very interesting shareholder base, a very strong one. Maybe you can just take us through some of the larger shareholders.
Yeah, La Mancha Resources is our largest shareholder. So they're just under 19% at this point. Followed just behind at 9.9% is Franco-Nevada. That's been a great partner of GMIN, providing stream financing, debt, and equity as part of the development of Tocantinzinho. And we also have Eldorado as a large shareholder below 9% at this point, where they took equity when we acquired Tocantinzinho. So those are essentially our top 3 shareholders at this point.
And so far, your acquisitions have been made in South America. Is this where your focus is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we've always developed our strategy to be America's focus in terms of how we wanted to grow. So that means also North America, but so far, I would say we've had more success identifying opportunities in South America at this point.
And when you're looking for assets to acquire, what are the top 3 elements that you're looking for?
I mean, we always focus on the quality of the resource. We always want to start with something that's of suitable scale that can be turned into a mine. We're also looking at all the, call it, permitting factors, social acceptability of different projects, and then really timeline. We want to make sure that we get involved in projects that can sequence well within our portfolio. So obviously now we're more open to projects that are a little longer dated, that require a little more work and time to be ready for development, given that we'll be busy with Oko for the next couple of years.
Louis-Pierre, as we wrap up, you've already provided a lot of detail on what's happening at GMIN Ventures, but maybe you can just summarize what shareholders can look forward to in terms of news flow in the coming months.
Yeah, so obviously there'll be essentially the feasibility study for the project that will be Q1 next year. But before that, we intend to publish some exploration results of all the infill drilling that's been taking place on Oko over the last 6 months, I would say. So that'll give a lot of comfort to investors on how the infill drilling has succeeded in converting inferred resources, and also some expansion drilling that's taken place. And then obviously we'd like to maybe update on some of the exploration that we've done on Tocantinzinho, providing a little more clarity on some of the targets that we've identified and the work that we've completed towards the end of the year. So those are some of the key milestones that we look to update shareholders with.
Louis-Pierre, that was a great overview and a great update on G Mining Ventures, and I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.